Part 1. Genghis Khan, the boy who refused to stay dead. Hey guys, tonight, dim the lights, put your phone face down, loosen your shoulders. We're going to drift slowly, calmly, and very sleepily into the life of a man who absolutely did not drift through anything at all. This is the story of Genghis Khan. Yes, that one. The most feared man in history, the human embodiment of this escalated quickly. But we're not doing battlefield chaos tonight. We're doing childhood trauma, family dysfunction, awkward leadership moments, and the long, exhausting road from rejected steppe kid to global problem. So settle in, because this story moves slowly, like a horse at a gentle walking pace, on a very cold Mongolian plain, at night. And we begin, as always, with a deeply inconvenient birth. Genghis Khan was born sometime around 1162. We're not totally sure when, which already sets the tone. If your birth year is a debate topic, life is probably not going to be chill. His original name was Temujin, which sounds cool and ominous. And it should, because according to legend, he was born clutching a blood clot in his fist. Now, is that medically likely? No. Is it a dramatic origin story people love to repeat? Absolutely. Ancient historians loved a spooky baby moment. If you weren't born during a lightning storm or holding something symbolic, did you even matter? Temujin's father was named Yesuge, a tribal leader, a warrior, a man who thought kidnapping your future wife was a perfectly normal way to start a family. Because yes, that's how Temujin's parents met. Yesuge abducted Hoelun from another man. She did not have a say in this. Welcome to the Mongolian steppe. Romance was optional. Despite this, Hoelun would become one of the most important influences in Temujin's life. Smart, tough, practical. The kind of woman who survives everything and expects you to do the same. Temujin grew up in a harsh world. Endless grasslands, freezing winters, burning summers, no cities, no castles, just tents, horses, and the constant understanding that food was never guaranteed. This was not a childhood of toys and tutors. This was a childhood of don't starve and watch your back. And then, right on schedule, everything collapsed. When Temujin was around 9 years old, his father was poisoned, probably by a rival tribe, possibly by people who still held a grudge over the whole kidnapping a wife thing, which, fair. Yesuge dies, and suddenly, Temujin's family is no longer useful. Their tribe abandons them. Just packs up, leaves. No safety net. No backup plan, just a woman and her children left on the steppe with basically nothing. This is the moment where many stories end quietly, but Temujin's does not. Hoelun does something extraordinary. She keeps them alive. She teaches her children to gather roots, to hunt small animals, to survive on almost nothing. She also teaches them one crucial lesson. Never rely on anyone else to save you, which, emotionally speaking, is not ideal, but historically speaking, very effective. Temujin grows up angry, hungry, humiliated. Other kids mock him, rival families look down on him. He's technically noble, but functionally dirt poor. This creates a personality cocktail of resentment, ambition, and an extremely long memory. And then, things get darker. Inside his own family, tensions rise. There's a half-brother named Bektor, older, stronger, and increasingly threatening. Bektor starts asserting dominance, taking food, taking authority, basically acting like he's in charge now. Temujin does not appreciate this. So, one day, he and his full brother ambush Bektor and kill him. Yes, as a teenager, he murders his own brother. No ceremony, no speeches, just gone. Hoelin is furious, not because of the killing itself, this is the steppe after all, but because it threatens the family's survival. But the damage is done. Temujin has crossed a line, and more importantly, people notice. Not long after, Temujin is captured by a rival clan. They put him in a wooden collar, which is exactly as uncomfortable as it sounds. He becomes a prisoner, a walking symbol of failure, a teenage nobody. This is usually where someone breaks. Temujin does not. He escapes. Legend says he fled at night, hid in a river, and used the reeds to breathe, which is either incredibly clever or a story added later to make him sound cooler. Either way, he gets away, and something shifts. Temujin starts building alliances, not based on blood, not based on tradition, but on loyalty. This is weird, radical, almost offensive to the aristocracy. He rewards people for skill, not lineage, which means a lot of powerful families hate him immediately. But the poor, the overlooked, the desperate, they love him. Slowly, quietly, Temujin gathers followers. He reconnects with a childhood friend named Jamuka. They swear brotherhood, which sounds sweet and is, briefly. Jamuka is everything Temujin is not. Aristocratic, traditional, very invested in noble hierarchy. At first, they lead together. Then they don't. Because eventually, Jamuka wants power the old way, and Temujin wants power the new way. This will not end peacefully. But we're not rushing. Temujin also marries Borta, his first wife. She's intelligent, calm, and deeply important to him. Almost immediately, she is kidnapped. Because again, that's just how things worked. Temujin launches a rescue mission, and succeeds. This matters more than it sounds, because Borta's return solidifies Temujin's position. It proves he can act decisively, that he can protect his own. It also begins a lifelong pattern of absolute devotion to her, and a very flexible attitude towards having children with other women. Balance. Over time, Temujin wins battles, loses some, learns, adopts. He doesn't rely on tradition. He studies what works. He uses discipline, organization, merit-based promotion. And slowly, the tribes begin to fall in line, not because they love him, but because resisting him becomes exhausting. Eventually, Temujin defeats Jamuka. His former friend is captured and executed. Temujin reportedly offers mercy first. Jamuka refuses, which is tragic and also very on brand. With that, Temujin becomes the undisputed leader of the Mongolian tribes. In 1206, he is given a new title, Genghis Khan, which roughly means universal ruler. Casual, very chill. And this is where most history books start screaming about conquest. But for tonight, we pause. Because this wasn't a monster born fully formed. This was a child shaped by abandonment, hunger, betrayal, and a mother who taught him that survival was the only morality that mattered. And next time, we'll gently drift into what happens when someone like that gains absolute power and looks outward. So breathe, relax your jaw, and let's float quietly toward the beginning of an empire. All right, welcome back. Get comfortable again. If you drifted off, that's perfect. If you didn't, don't worry, nothing loud is coming. When we last left Temujin, now officially Genghis Khan, he had done the impossible. He united the Mongolian tribes, something no one had managed to do without immediately being stopped for it. This alone was a big deal. But what's interesting is how he did it. Because now that he was in charge, Genghis didn't celebrate. He reorganized, which is not exciting, but extremely dangerous. He understood something very simple. Chaos wins battles. Organization wins everything else. So the first thing he did was break up the old tribal loyalties. Families were split, clans were mixed, people were reassigned into units of 10, 100, 1,000. This was deliberate. You didn't fight for your cousin anymore. You fought for your unit, and your unit fought for Genghis. It was emotionally devastating and strategically brilliant. He promoted people based on merit, which meant former slaves could command nobles, which meant nobles were furious, which meant anyone who resisted quietly disappeared. Genghis Khan was not sentimental about resistance. He also introduced laws, actual laws, written down. They were called the yasa, and they covered everything from theft to military discipline to how to behave during a hunt. The laws were strict, sometimes absurdly strict. Steal? Death. Lie to the Khan? Death. Disrupt military order? Also death. Basically, if you enjoyed being alive, you followed instructions. But here's the strange part. He was also fair. Punishments applied to everyone. No exceptions for nobility. No "do you know who my father is" moments. And people respected that. They didn't like it, but they trusted it. Trust on the steppe was a rare currency. Genghis also understood logistics, which sounds boring but wins empires. He organized supply lines, rotating horses, messenger systems that could cross continents. His armies moved faster than anyone thought possible. They also didn't loot randomly. Loot was distributed by rule. Again, not emotional, just efficient. Genghis also employed engineers from conquered lands, Chinese siege experts, Muslim mathematicians. He didn't destroy knowledge, he absorbed it, which is not what people expect from the most feared man in history. But fear was a tool, not a personality. As campaigns expanded, Genghis delegated authority to trusted generals, men who had once been nobodies, men who owed everything to him. Loyalty reinforced by gratitude is extremely stable. By the time he turned west, his empire was already massive. And then came the Khwarezmian Empire. This did not go well. It started with trade. Genghis sent merchants, peaceful ones. They were executed. Then he sent ambassadors, diplomats. They were humiliated and killed. This was a mistake, a colossal one. Genghis took it personally, which historically speaking is never ideal. He mobilized everything. What followed was not chaos, it was methodical. Cities fell one by one, resistance was crushed, rulers fled. The Khwarezmian Shah spent his final days running from place to place, sick, paranoid, and slowly realizing he had ruined everything, which is a very human ending. Genghis did not enjoy this destruction, but he did not hesitate either. To him, betrayal demanded consequence. This campaign cemented his reputation forever. Stories spread, exaggerated, mutated. He became less a man and more a warning. Parents scared children with his name. Kings lost sleep. Which is ironic because Genghis himself rarely rested. He remained restless, constantly moving, constantly planning. He never built a capital city, never settled. He ruled from horseback, from tents, from wherever he happened to be. This was not an empire of marble halls. It was an empire of motion. At home, succession questions simmered. Which son would inherit? Jochi was eldest but controversial. Chagatai was harsh and inflexible. Tolu was capable but young. Genghis chose Ogadai, not the strongest, not the eldest, but the most balanced. This decision avoided immediate collapse, which is impressive. As Genghis aged, his health declined, but his authority did not. He was still obeyed instantly, still feared, still absolute. And yet, he never sought immortality. No grand tomb, no monument. He wanted to disappear. And he would, but not yet. Because before the end, there was one last campaign, one last journey, one final test of endurance. So breathe slowly. Let the rhythm settle. Next time, we drift into the quiet ending of the loudest life on the steppe, and what happened after the world's most feared man finally stopped moving.
All right. Welcome back for the last stretch. Get a little more comfortable. Adjust the pillow. Let your breathing slow down again. We're coming to the end now. Not with a bang, not with a dramatic final stand, but in a way that feels strangely appropriate for a man who spent his entire life moving and never really explained himself. By the time Genghis Khan reached his 60s, which was already impressive for the 13th century, his body was tired, not weak, just worn. Decades on horseback will do that to you. He had conquered more land than any man before him, from the Pacific edges of China to the fringes of Europe, an empire so large that news took months to travel across it. And yet, he never seemed satisfied. There was always another frontier, another tribe not quite aligned, another ruler who needed to learn a lesson about diplomacy. So even in his final years, Genghis was still campaigning, still riding, still insisting on being present. His last campaign was against the Western Xia Kingdom, a smaller state, but stubborn. And at this point in his life, Genghis had very little patience left for stubbornness. The campaign dragged on. Sieges are slow, methodical, exhausting. And somewhere during this campaign, Genghis Khan was injured. The sources disagree on how. Some say he fell from a horse, others say illness. There are even rumors of an assassination attempt. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that he knew. He knew this was the end. And what's fascinating is how calm everything became. There was no public panic, no frantic scrambling, no emotional speeches. Genghis had prepared for this. He gave final orders, confirmed succession plans, reinforced loyalty. And then, in August of 1227, Genghis Khan died. Quietly. The most feared man in history did not die in battle. He did not die surrounded by enemies. He died among his people, in a tent, far from any city, which feels intentional. And then came one of the strangest funerals in history. Genghis Khan wanted no monument, no tomb, no legacy carved in stone. He wanted to vanish. According to tradition, his body was carried back to Mongolia in secrecy. Anyone who saw the funeral procession was killed. The escort themselves were later executed. The burial site was hidden. Horses were ridden over it to erase the ground, trees planted, rivers possibly redirected. To this day, no one knows where Genghis Khan is buried. Archaeologists have searched for decades. Nothing. The man who reshaped the world disappeared completely. And maybe that's exactly what he wanted. But of course, death did not stop the consequences. His sons inherited an empire so vast it barely made sense. Ogadai became Great Khan, capable, practical, fond of drinking a bit too much. The empire expanded even further under his rule. Europe felt the tremors, cities panicked, kings prayed. Later, his grandsons would rule China, Persia, Russia. The Mongol Empire would become the largest contiguous empire in human history. And then, slowly, inevitably, it fractured. Because empires built on motion struggle with stillness. Family rivalries emerged, succession disputes, cultural differences. The unity Genghis enforced through sheer force of will could not be maintained forever, but his impact never faded. He reshaped trade routes, connected east and west, protected merchants, encouraged religious tolerance. Yes, the most feared man in history was surprisingly tolerant of belief systems. As long as you paid taxes and followed the rules, he did not care who you prayed to, which, again, is not what people expect. Modern genetics suggests that millions of people today share his DNA, an entire lineage carried forward by conquest, politics, and a frankly aggressive family tree. But beyond numbers, beyond territory, what remains is the paradox. Genghis Khan was brutal, unforgiving, relentless, and also deeply rational, organized, emotionally controlled. He was not chaotic evil, he was structured inevitability, a man shaped by abandonment who created absolute loyalty, a child of hunger who built abundance for his people, a leader who destroyed cities and protected ideas. History often paints him as a monster, and sometimes that's fair. But monsters don't usually build systems that last centuries. Genghis Khan didn't conquer the world because he loved violence. He conquered it because he hated disorder. And in the end, when his work was done, he asked for nothing. No statue, no grave, no worship, just silence. So as you lie there now, breathing slowly, let that silence settle. The grass grows back, the steppe stretches endlessly, and somewhere beneath it, the most feared man in history rests completely forgotten by the earth he once ruled. And that is where we'll stop tonight. Sleep well.